Hi, I'm Lakyn Coppedge. I'm part of the SPU women's rowing team here at Seattle Pacific University.
Lakyn, you spent last weekend in San Diego at the Crew Classic. Tell us about that.
Well, I rowed in the V4 this weekend, and we had our heat on Sunday, and it was pretty exhilarating to be able to race with other crews, some that we didn't really know going into the heat where everyone was at, so we were just kind of preparing all weekend to really bring our best to the table, and it was really great. We didn't have the start that we wanted to, but by the end of the race we were on it, and we made a full move on a boat, and it felt really awesome to get connected with the other rowers and really kind of show a glimpse of what we have as a boat to
Great.
offer.
Now that is a two-day event. You went down there with the Varsity 8 crew, and they had heat racing on Saturday.
Yeah.
How frustrating was that to, I guess, have to sit and watch on Saturday and wait for your grand final on Sunday?
Well, we had practice. We went and practiced while the V8 was warming up for their races and for their first race. And so that was nice to get out on the water. We went kind of far, rode around Mission Bay, but it was frustrating to not be able to kind of know our placement within the different boats that we were rowing against, and it was nice to be able to be there and support the team and kind of get the feel for the regatta, but it was frustrating to say the least, but I think because there's a lot of anxiety building with that, but I feel like we really kind of calmed down together as a boat and practiced what we needed to practice, and the next day we're able to implement it.
For those people who may not be as familiar with rowing, so you're out there against crews you don't know, but what is that dynamic? You kind of have your own race plan regardless of what the other crews are doing. How does that work?
Well, our race plan.
Yeah, so you're going in, you're going to row your race regardless of what others
yeah.
are doing. How does that work out?
I think it has a lot to do with keeping your focus and your head in the boat, because it's very easy to want to go out at a faster rate to try and catch up or keep boats away because there's other things around you, there's other variables, but I think we did a pretty good job at our start settling down to the rate that we needed to and going hard regardless of who was around, but sticking to the race plan is a hard thing to do, especially when we had a race after a couple days of kind of being antsy and not really knowing what the other crews had to offer, but I think just having a focus and being connected with your team and focusing on that was...
That was the first kind of true road regatta. You've been down to Lakewood, places where you could drive to. This is the first one where you flew. Tell me about how do you get the oars and the boats down to San Diego from Seattle?
Well, we rode to Pocock Center here in Seattle before we left for San Diego and loaded up our boats on a trailer with other Seattle crews that were going to San Diego. And so for the rest of the week we had to practice with boats and different oars, and if anything that's helpful because you kind of get to focus on your rowing and your technique rather than being reliant on your favorite equipment or what you're used to. And I think that's a big skill when it comes to traveling, because you can't be reliant on the conditions or the weather or how you're used to the water being. And so and then when we got to San Diego, we unloaded our trailers and were able to practice in those boats again, so it's good.
Great. This week, stay home, so to speak. You're rowing here in Seattle at the Husky Open just across town, but in very familiar waters in the Montlake Cut. Tell us about what you expect in that.
I'm very excited to be back in an 8 because 4s are a little different. It's a little easier in a 4 to feel what you're doing to the boat, and in an 8 you kind of can hide a lot of different maybe errors or weaknesses, and so I'm really excited this week to focus on those weaknesses in an 8 and really strengthen together as a boat. We just had a meeting talking about coming together and really pushing each other for this race, I'm really excited to get out on the water, especially in the cut. I think that's probably one of my favorite race courses because there's a lot of energy when you're rowing through the last 500, which is probably the most painful part of the race. But it's really exciting. I'm really excited.
Let's talk a little bit about your rowing journey. First off, what year are you here at Seattle Pacific?
I'm a sophomore, second year.
And your second year on the rowing team?
Yes.
Did you have any rowing experience prior to coming to SPU?
No, I had to Google it. When I had a couple friends who were interested in the team and wanted me to join them, so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then I went to my room and I Googled what crew was because I'm from the desert and not a lot of water around me, but it's been a journey.
What was the most difficult part in the process last year of learning how to row?
Last year, it was probably, we were on the ergs for a while before we were really trusted to get out on the water. And I think I had a lot of anxiety about getting on the water for the first time. And I would say, like, conquering that fear and getting out on the water and really just not being afraid to try and figure out my stroke and try new things and learn how to feather. It's been interesting and fun,
Great.
but
A lot of new faces in the boathouse this year, people in your situation that in the same spot you were last year. Have you been able to offer any advice or help some of the novices out?
I think that's been a really fun experience that's one thing I love about rowing is if you have no idea what you're doing, you're not alone because it is such a new sport at a collegiate level. And it's a lot of fun to watch the novices journey through the first year and be able to say, actually, like, I've been there. I was there not too long ago. Here's how I fixed it. Here's something that I do that helps me, and be able to give that perspective, but also learn things from the novices that we haven't thought of. And so it's been fun.
You mentioned you weren't familiar with the sport of rowing from where you grew up. Tell us where you're from.
I'm from Las Cruces, New Mexico, so southern New Mexico, and moving to Seattle was a big change for me, let alone doing a sport on the water, because I played volleyball and softball in high school, and this is probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
I bet. And what brought you to Seattle Pacific?
My dad works in the area, and since I was younger, I've been coming up to Seattle with him, and I fell in love with the city and the rain, not being in a drought. So that was probably the first thing, but when I toured this campus, I really fell in love with the community, and it's really cool to be a sophomore now and have the community at school, but also the community that the team offers. I've never been closer to a team and included on a campus in the athletic department, and it's been really a wonderful experience.
And lastly, have you decided on a major yet?
I am a global development major, and I'm minoring in women's studies and Spanish.
Great. And after college, or where do you see that taking you?
After college, I'll probably go into the Peace Corps for a couple of years and then come back for a master's degree. And I'd like to work in the nonprofit sector, working in less developed countries for women's rights.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, and good luck at the Husky Open this weekend.
Thank you very much.